whether the two or more percentages are different. Now, it deals with percentages and ratios. So for example here, that in a study of 933 patients with cancer, that 10% of the men have pneumonia, and compared with 5% of women with pneumonia. So you have this ratio, 44 out of 444 men versus 36 out of 714 men. So these two ratios statistically significantly different. Okay, what is the probability that this observation was by chance or not? Okay, so that is the type of question that the chi-square would be able to address. Okay, so it addresses whether there's any statistical difference or the difference in these ratios can occur by chance. So it is a univariate test. It addresses the difference in ratio. Okay? And the samples are unmatched, and these are the nominal categorical variables, and can address more than two groups. And but the n, okay, has to be more than or equal to 20, and that is one of the limitations. Fisher's exact test. Now this test can be used for a 2x2 contingency table when the number of cases are too small to satisfy the assumption for the chi-square test. So that means that the total number of cases are less than 20, or the expected number of cases in any of the cells is less than 1, or more than 25% of the cells have expected frequencies of less than 5. So when we have quantitative data, when we want to see if they correlate with each other, for example, let's say we're looking at the expression of two genes, whether the protein level of one gene or the protein level of another gene, whether they either correlate with each other. Correlate can mean two things. They can either positively correlate with each other or inversely correlate or negatively correlate with each other. Negative correlation means that as one goes up, the other goes down. Okay, positive correlation means that when one goes up, the other also goes up. To assess this type of relationship, this is an assumption of a linear association between two continuous variables. This test of Pearson correlation test can be run. This is a univariate test that addresses association and deal with continuous data. Spearman rank order correlation. This examines the relationship between two ordinal variables or two skewed continuous variables. This is a non-parametric equivalent of the Pearson correlation. So it's also univariate, deals with the issue of association, but it deals with the ordinal type of data or skewed continuous data. Now, the same slide that I've shown previously about the type 2 error. Type 2 error means that there is, you conclude that there's no difference, when indeed there is a true difference. So we always talk about statistical power. What exactly is this statistical power? Okay, so power is actually 1 minus beta. Alpha is the 0.05, the desired p-value that we want. The sample size, okay, is also related. The beta is very much dependent on the sample size. So the question that we often come across is that if I do not find any difference, how sure am I that there is in fact no difference? This is always the question. So by convention, okay, we would accept a power of 80%, meaning a beta of 20%. And very often when we, before we actually do any research, or clinical research or animal research or whatever, we have to do advanced planning, okay? And many institutions require the protocols for the research to be written ahead of time and approved before you can proceed. For example, with animal protocols, to make sure you do not waste animals, you do not waste life, that you need to know exactly how many animals you need ahead of time before you go ahead and start the experiment. So when you write the animal protocols, they require you to provide a statistical justification of how many animals per group that you're going to use. Okay? The same way in the clinical trial, before the drug company or before the granting institution is going to give you this huge amount of money, or they always would like to try to give you the minimum amount of money that's adequate for the study, but not give you too much and waste too much money. Okay, so exactly how many patients do you need for the clinical trial? So in order to find that out, okay, you need to do some statistical calculation to provide a statistical justification of how many patients you're going to need to recruit for the study. So for the sample size calculation, there are some online calculators available, and also in the statistical programs such as SimpliFlop, they have calculators that will help you to calculate sample size. So for clinical studies or animal studies, very often we come across what we call survival analysis. Okay. Survival analysis is basically a type of analysis that analyze a time to event variable. Okay. So survival usually refers to the time from the time of diagnosis to the time of death. But alternatively, you can define a time to event variable and use the same type of methodology or analytical method to analyze this type of time to event data. The method is called Kaplan-Meier method. Okay. The Kaplan-Meier method basically calculates the cumulative survival and provides a curve that defines the cumulative survival. And the actual statistical test to examine whether the two curves, the survival curves of two groups are significantly different or not, that statistical test is called log-rank test, one of the commonly used tests to evaluate survival curves. This methodology, the Kaplan-Meier method or the log-rank test, this is univariate. So, but when we want to analyze multiple covariates or want to adjust for covariates, we would use the proportional hazards model, and one of them, the multivariate model, is called Cox regression, Cox proportional hazard model. And this type of modeling would be able to adjust for covariates in the survival analysis. So what are the factors that you will want to test in your model? You need justification for including or excluding different factors. Okay. So depending on the size of your data set, okay, how many numbers, number of patients, the number of animals in your study, in your data set, the number of covariates that the data set can support is limited. And you cannot add every factor in the sum into the data set and expect that you will be able to come out with any meaningful answer. So you have to design the model a priori, meaning that you need to think about it. You don't just put data and just throw it into the some computer program and expect something good to come out of it. Okay, so garbage in, garbage out. So you have to think about what the covariates that you need to put into the model. So you need to know about the biology and the background of the, for example, if you're analyzing survival of cancer, you need to know what are the known factors that are important predictors of survival for that particular cancer. Okay. So, for example, estrogen receptor status is important for breast cancer, but you don't throw that into the analysis for analysis of prostate cancer. For example, Gleason score is important for prostate cancer, but you don't include that, you won't even have that for analysis of breast cancer. So, what are the relevant factors that you need to find out? That is not coming from the data set. You need to know that ahead of time so that you would collect the correct data set for your particular analysis. Okay? So if you do not plan ahead of time and collect the data, for example, you collect the Gleason score for your prostate cancer analysis, okay, then you don't have the data. You don't have the data to put into your Cox model. Right? So very often, when you see papers or reports, some people report a stepwise regression. Okay, that isn't known. Personally, I hate that. Now, stepwise regression means that you're not doing any thinking. You're just throwing everything into the computer and see what comes out. Okay, so garbage in, garbage out. No thinking. Whatever you throw everything in, what comes out doesn't make sense. So stepwise regression is okay for a first look for exploration. Okay, but the final model that you report, where you actually test, need to make sense. They need to make clinical sense and need to make biological sense. Okay? So in fact, some of the high-level journals do not accept stepwise regression for publication. So next, I'm going to talk about dose-response curves. So very often, in the cell culture experiments, when we're dealing with analysis of drug effects in the cell culture or in vitro, we would do experiments and put the different concentrations of the drug to the cell culture and then measure a particular event or parameter. In this case, I am going to show the dose response curves for inhibition of the growth of cancer cells. So very often, have you all used a technique called the MTT assay or MTS assay? Basically, it's the use of formazan dye to be metabolized by the mitochondria to a compound that has an orange color, and then measure the optical density of the colored compound to reflect the number of live cells in the culture. Has anyone done that? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so not very many people have done that. The principle is pretty simple. So you have something that you can measure as a result or a response, okay, and it's a quantitative value, okay. And here the machine, okay, measures individual wells of cells containing the cells in there, and the values in each cell reflect directly proportional to the number of live cells present in that well. Okay. So you've got the data arranged in all these format here, individual numbers at the individual positions representing the wells in the plate on the cell culture. So from here, when you take the measurement with the machine produces this Excel file. And from this Excel file of the raw data, you can cut and paste and copy into the signal plot. Okay, so these are the individual data for wells of the same group. Okay, these are the wells that are exposed to the same concentration. So you line them up in order. Okay, so and then in this column here, you just put down the concentration in order. So let's say this is exposed to, can't see, but whatever concentration here corresponds to this column. The next concentration here corresponds to the next column, and the next concentration here corresponds to the next column. And then you tell the program that you want to plot, okay, a line curve with error bars, and you tell it to do the calculation for you and do the column means. Okay, so it would plot the mean of each column, and when it says x minus y, the x correspond to the value for the x-axis. We tell it that it's on in this column, and then you can tell the program to plot what the error bars represent. I would use the error bars to represent the 95% confidence intervals. So, and then you tell it to plot, it will come up with a graph like this, okay? So when we look at the dose response curves, okay, in pharmacology, when we look at the dose, okay, that means the horizontal axis, we usually look at it using the logarithmic scale. Okay, so typically for drug responses, the log dose response curve has a sigmoidal shape. So here, when you look at this looks nowhere like an S. Okay, so when you design your experiment, okay, you also will need to pick the concentrations that would look good on a sigmoidal log dose response curve. So one easy way to do that would be to do serial dilutions. Okay, so if I do serial dilutions, starting out with, let's say, 10 micromole. Okay, so I diluted half. Okay, so it's 10 micromole, 5 micromole, 2.5 micromole, 1.25 micromole. So serial dilution, half and half, and going down. That way, when you plot the concentration on a log scale, it will look pretty. So when you plot all this kind of serial dilution on a logarithmic scale, okay, it will be evenly spaced. So here, to represent the zero, we can put a break at the axis so that this does not get drawn out too far. Okay, so added the break in the axis here. Okay, and each of these error bars will represent a 95% confidence interval. So here, this is the raw output, and it looks ugly. We'll make it look nice by doing all the labeling and the adding in the name of the drug, concentrations, etc., and the proper labeling, and make it thick and easy to see. Okay, so that's my preference of how to do the dose response curves. And now, very often in the experiments, when we look at combinations of drugs, or when we look at different factors affecting a particular, the response to a particular drug or agent, we look at the issue of whether there's synergism or antagonism. So when we look at combinations of drugs, when we combine the two drugs, drug A may have some effect and drug B may have some effect. And when we talk about synergism or antagonism, the meaning is that when the two drugs are together, it is more than or less than the effect of drug A and drug B individually added together. So the method to analyze that type of data was pioneered or formalized by Charles and Talladega. And there are two computer programs that I know about. CalcuSyn is a commercial program by BioSoft, and CompuSyn is a free program available on the internet. And I'm going to show you some data regarding how to analyze this. So basically, you do the experiment using the 96-well plate with the different concentrations of the drug A and drug B. Okay. So in the different wells, okay, you arrange the wells, okay, so that the concentration of drug A is increasing this way, the concentration of drug B is increasing this way. Okay, so you end up with different combinations of the drugs here. So and then when you measure the response of the drugs, okay, and then at the end you line up your response of the drugs, the actual measured response corresponding to the concentrations of the drugs. And then this is how you enter it into the computer here. That you have the drug concentration and the response. Okay, this is the data for one drug, and this is the data for the drug A. This is data for drug A. This is data for drug B, and this is data for the drug combination of drug A and B. Okay, with the concentration of drug A and drug B labeled. So then you basically you tell the computer which column represents what. Okay, which column is drug A, which column is drug B, which column is the combination, and then the program would come up with the results in the form of graphs. So the graphs output from the program CalcuSyn is not very appealing. So I always export the data to use sigma plot to replot it. Okay. So the data from the program called CompuSyn or CalcuSyn is basically calculates what called the combination index, the CI. So for the combination index is greater than 1, or the logarithm of the combination index being 0. Okay. If it's above, it is antagonism. If it's below, it is synergism. Okay. So this is a picture of a combination of the drug called cisplatin and the drug called AZ-345. That this pretty much falls slightly on the antagonism side. Okay, so another set of data looks at the combination of the drug XL184 in combination with the drug metformin, and you can see that the data for the fractional effects that are higher than 0.1, that the data points falls below log combination index equals 0. So it falls below the red line here, and it indicates that the combination of these two drugs are synergistic. So with animal experiments, very often we would come up with the size of the tumors being analyzed for growth curve. Okay, so when we try to use in vivo models or xenograft models in the mice to see if a drug has any impact on the growth of the tumor, We would give the mice the drug and then follow the size of the cancer, follow the size of the xenograft. So this type of data for each tumor, it is a series of measurements, or a series of repeated measures. Okay. So how do we analyze this type of data? The average growth within a population and its variation is the goal. Okay, so the continuous latent variable or growth factor is one way to deal with this. Because if you analyze only the size of the tumor at the end of the experiment, okay, so basically you will be analyzing the data only obtained at one point of time. Then all the data points before that, you basically ignoring it or not using it. Okay, so if the data that you obtain at the end of the experiment did not reach statistical significance, what are you going to do?